I'm going to be in so much trouble if Ruthie listens to this episode, Chris. So,
welcome back to another episode of the Entrepreneurial Family Man Podcast. I'm Chris Niemeyer with Michael McGreevy, Chris McCluskey, and Jamie Slingerland.
So good to see you. I've missed you since last week. We haven't really connected that much in the last 7 days.
We're just guys who are crazy about our lives. We love our kids, and we want to kill it in business. This is part 2 in the series of money. Last week we talked about money mindset. Do you deserve the income that you have? Today we want to just continue that conversation about these discussions on money.
You're a turkey. Jamie's kidding. It's been like 5 minutes since we recorded part 1 of this. So here we're just picking up that same conversation, which is a really cool opportunity because we got into some thick stuff there. No way we were going to do it justice last week. So this is brilliant to just continue it right on.
You know, I had a vision for my finances. Kind of went through this first episode, feeling good about my money mindset, I'm kind of developing, getting to a new place. But there's one problem. I'm not the only one that's part of my financial vision. I have this beautiful woman called my wife who has a financial vision.
Glad you clarified that.
We love our wives.
We're crazy about our wives.
Who I'm crazy about. Now I got to figure this whole thing out again. What the heck do we do with that?
Absolutely. Well, it's got to be because it is our equation. We are married and we're entrepreneurially in this marriage together. And so we are joining those discussions and mindsets around money. We've got to talk about that. What does that look like? We didn't talk about each of our wives' upbringings on the last episode, but we talked about our own and how that's informed our own money mindset. Well, our wife comes with the same ideas about money. How do we reconcile that? What do we talk about when it comes to discussions on money with our wife?
I don't know. I don't have the answer, but I will just share a little bit about my story. You've already heard a little bit about my perspective on money and how it was really kind of limited based on our level of accomplishment with money was based on our ability to be frugal. And my wife had a much healthier view on money. Her dad was a successful doctor for over 30 years, had a good income, was a very, very good steward of that money. He planned very well for his life. We have two very different perspectives coming crashing into each other. We've had a lot of discussions about how we want to move forward together. We're both having to stretch in a lot of different ways. I don't have it figured out yet, guys, but I'm having the conversations and I'm walking through it right now.
Bingo. And that's the message that every one of us needs to hear is that we got to have the conversations. Of course, she's in the equation. And of course, we can't have it figured out, but we better not figure it out in isolation because she's going to be saying, wait, what? I'm sorry. I'm not on board with that. And that's part of loving her and honoring her is to include her in those internal wrestlings that we have with money. I can so clearly remember when throughout our 20s, I would keep coming home, like I mentioned on our last episode, and saying to Rachel, I got to get out of this just locked into a fixed ability to earn as an employee, and I can't get beyond that built-in ceiling. We were at a place where I was 29 years old, had our first child born, and I was working 3 jobs. They were all jobs where I was somebody else's employee and there was a fixed amount that I could make. And at that point, I'm driving home at night so exhausted, I'm slapping myself in the face to stay awake. I got no more energy. I got no more time. And something is broken here in this world of being an employee. The dreams I have for our family financially and what I can actually pull down financially at this point in my life, there's just this big chasm. So yeah, I got to talk with the wife about that. The upshot of that was we actually sold the home we were living in at the time, and we moved in as a married couple with our little 3-year-old, and we had our next baby, so a little infant. We moved into my parents' basement. I was 30 years old. Oh my gosh, is this like failure to launch? No, I had launched, and I got a massive wake-up call about the realities of built-in ceilings on income ability. And so my wife and I had a lot of late night talks about that and about entrepreneurism. And out of that time in that basement, that's when we launched my private therapy practice.
I love that story, Chris. And that's just a good point, is to, in these discussions, start dreaming together. Start wanting to plan. Start exploring, what is it that you believe about money? What is it that I believe about money? And if we're on this entrepreneurial journey together, I mean, that's frankly how Alicia and I started that conversation too. We were both like, we're stuck in these jobs. We have this entrepreneurial itch. Let's just kind of scratch it together and see what this is about. Boy, Chris, very similar story. I mean, when we launched our first business, our first online business, and eventually left San Diego because we're like, this is just too expensive and crazy anyway. We spent 3 months in a small room in my wife's grandparents' house, paid them rent because we were trying to figure out, well, where is it that we want to live? We weren't sure if we wanted to stay there. It was just that idea of like, let's kind of scale down a bit and figure out what dreams do we want to create here for our family in the future. And man, that was just a fun season to literally have to write a check to a grandparent to pay rent. But we knew we were on a different trajectory in terms of our dreams, of our income. And it's just been awesome to see that journey take place.
And the key word in what you just said was we. You kept saying we, meaning you and Alicia, because a lot of wives don't get very excited about the thought of living in a grandparent's basement unless they've been part of the conversation that led to that, and they caught the vision with you as the two of you fleshed it out and said, yeah, we're going to do this together because we're in this adventure together.
McGreevy, did you know either of those stories?
No, man. I were with these successful guys. They both live in their parents' basements. What's going on?
I know, right? It's so much fun to get to hear these stories. It's so cool how when you talk about a topic like this, I forget those stories in my own life and just have to go back to a conversation like this in order to pull it out. 2 episodes ago, we were talking about taking a giant step back to go forward. And I said at the beginning of that all the people that I know that are my heroes, and that includes McCluskey and Niemeyer, is that you guys have some entrepreneurial stories that are not so glamorous. If you weren't on the same page with your wife having these conversations about budgeting and money and what are we going to do in our business, you never would have probably had those sweet times in grandma's basement or in mother-in-law and father-in-law's room. It can be really awesome. And some of those times that could almost seem like you were a loser, that's the time where like the relationship, you guys are growing something together and both becoming on the same page, dreaming about what that business and what that opportunity is going to do for the family in the future, the time you're going to spend. It's so cool to hear that part of your story.
Well, I love that, most entrepreneurs do have some kind of story like this. Even some of the most successful people have these stories of knocking on doors to try to get a job or whatever. And I think that's part of it. We talked a little bit on the last episode, is this attitude of gratitude that comes from that. Now, there are a lot of entrepreneurs that might have that story, but they never want to share it. But we're of the mindset that, hey, this is where we come from, but we did this together. We've come out this far on the other side. Jamie and Michael, we talked about an episode or 2 ago about your climbing out of the mountains of debt you had. And now look at you, right? I mean, it's the same kind of thing where you decided together as a couple, corporately, this is how we're going to tackle this. We're going to create this new future. And now we're talking about, blessing our wives with cars and stuff like that. I mean, this is just cool to see the journey that we've taken when it comes to this topic. We
have come a long way. I mean, we are able to afford bottled water now.
Good for you, man. No, it's still a sin, right? One thing I think was helpful for us is just the wording around what we called our vision for finances. It used to be my vision and her vision, and then how can we compromise? But it's not that anymore. For us, it's what is our financial vision? What's our vision together? There might be some things to work out within that vision, but we're moving together as one with this vision. And this isn't a separate thing where we're trying to trick each other into coming more in our direction or something. So that was really helpful for Lydia and I, is to just decide that we're doing this together and we're going to agree upon where we're going.
Michael, that's so cool. And for every one of us and every single guy listening, the reality is when it comes to these important discussions about the handling of money and the mindset that you're going to adopt as a family about money, that's going to pass to your kids, and the mindsets that they're going to adopt or battle against in being raised in your family. In the end, this is either going to drive us together as a husband and wife, or it's going to blow us apart. This will not come out with some kind of a net, zero kind of an issue. It's going to do one of two things to a relationship. And probably in the end, that's going to lay at the feet of how do we, as the guy, handle it? Do we invite those conversations? Do we admit our inadequacy, that we haven't got it all figured out? We didn't know how to handle the money. We're no smarter about this than they are, and that their values have just as much value as our values have. Do we come with that desire to cooperatively together come to a clarity, or do we still want to somehow kind of buffalo our way through it? It's going to cement us together, or it's going to blow us apart.
That's a great point.
Yeah, I was with you, McCluskey, until you said buffalo your way through it. That sounded defensive to me. Take that back.
Buffalo.
So you can't say Edgar Springs your way through it.
Just doesn't flow very well.
I'm thinking about this idea of starting a business just from a concept, and how it is such a mistake to build that vision by yourself. I mean, we look back at the success that we've had in our businesses, and it's about us being on the same page with our wife and doing these things in unity. I think maybe the issue is it takes a little bit more time and energy to create that compelling vision and have our partner buy in on it. I don't think guys can do it alone. This whole conversation of how to get my wife on board, that's a really great place to start, is to decide on how you're going to make decisions in your family about money, and you let your wife be a big part of how you guys move forward together.
Yeah, well, we've talked so much about these key words that we're using, the we, the our, together. Even if you're a guy who's not confident in even starting this conversation, she will be appreciative that you lead that conversation and bring it up and say, honey, what is it that we need to talk about with this topic? And again, as entrepreneurial men who now have kids, each of us have had those conversations. Now that you bring kids into the mix, and you want to bless them, and you want to create an extraordinary life for them, then you get back to the same conversation of dreaming and visioning. And boy, it'd be kind of cool to go on some pretty awesome adventures together at even a young age. Most people wait until they got, steel plates in their hip. Let's do it now, right?
Amen.
Man, I see an episode number 3 formulating here with kids and money. Hey, God gave us rocks and sticks to play with. You should be happy with that.
Me and McCluskey were building out the amazing outline that McGreevy blessed us with. Do you want to hear this awesome story? This next point is amazing. You got to hear it. And I was talking about this place in Mexico where me and Ruthie and the kids go. I have it's not even a secret desire. I ignore it because Ruthie brings it up. Let's go on the hot air balloon. And I'm like all for it until I look up the price. It starts at $600. I got to say, I want to earn enough money so I can take that hot air balloon with my family and not feel any guilt at all. It just doesn't make sense now to hold back on my retirement. We're already in Mexico spending money doing all that stuff there for close to a month. It's an extra expense that I feel like I want to thrive towards. That came out of me and Ruthie just having a conversation and her saying it. And I'm the one who ignores it, but I want to surprise her in the near future when we go there and do that.
That's pretty cool. That's a neat opportunity you could take. And, I think, Jamie, is part of that is, maybe it's going to require a little more money, but because of your entrepreneurial spirit and your mindset to money, that it's out there in abundance, and you can go and find extraordinary ways to create that income that you want. And you're walking in those ways already. We've been talking about in our private Facebook group, how do you invest in yourself? What is it? How much do you invest in yourself? And how have you seen that journey play out in yielding fruit? Jamie, you're a perfect example of that. You guys spent a lot of money talking about ways to improve and grow, and now you're reaping the benefits of that. So I look forward to seeing the picture on Facebook of you 6 in the hot air balloon someday. because I know it's going to happen.
That's a lot of pressure.
Good thing Ruthie never listens to this podcast, so your secret's still safe, right? She'll never know that you're going to surprise her with this.
Yeah, don't bring it up, guys.
Oh no.
We've been to that place for 3 different times, and she always says it. I look up the price, man.
Okay, but see here, that's a perfect illustration, though, Jamie, of what being an entrepreneur then allows you to do in thinking that and to consider that, to be vulnerable enough to put something out here that a whole lot of people who would hear that could immediately just say, what a stupid thing to even think about. I can't believe you just said that. That's so, frivolous. And instead you're saying, wait a minute, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm not an employee. I'm not fixed at a certain amount of income and I've got to make it stretch as far as it possibly can. You're saying as an entrepreneur, I could say, by golly, next time we go back there, I'm just going to do an extra gig, take on another client, sell something else, create something else, do a new product. There's endless ways that you as an entrepreneur who wants to bless your wife and family with that thing can say, I can come up with that 600 and not have any guilt about spending it because I wasn't robbing some other area of our lives or some other ministry or something. I earned it because I own the business. I'm not answerable to somebody else's employment contract.
Yeah.
Well, I love this discussion about the discussion on money, especially with our spouses. So let's move to point number 2 here, which is actions toward money. And I think some of that discussion that we talked about is an action we have to take as men. Let's have these conversations around this topic with our wives. But, Jamie, you bring up the hot air balloon. What are some of those actions or dreams that we have about the resources that we've been given?
What's it for you, Niemeyer?
Turn it back around.
Let's hear it, brother.
More than most people, we do enjoy traveling and traveling quite a bit. And so for us, that's where we dedicate a lot of our resources to. And we're going to continue that. But that's also in the context of as we get to increase income and the blessings that comes with that is also being a good steward of being able to bless other people. Routinely we'll talk about, gosh, we're getting a little extra here. Like, who are some other, missionary friends or an organization that we want to bless more? And so we do that, but it's okay to fly first class a couple times. I don't know. I mean, there's a few times we might have done that. We envision more travel in our family's future because we do believe that the world is a classroom. We've been able to already at young ages teach our kids so much by the cultures that we get to experience. And there's just a lot there. So that's for me. What about you, Jamie?
Again, I pushed it back on you, man. When you said first class, your shoulders went down and you felt like the emotion was guilt that you were feeling. If it's not for vanity and it's for your family to have this amazing experience, as the kids get older, I can envision you and Alicia up there in first class and the kids there in the back.
That sounds pretty awesome. And I know that we'll do that when they're older and they can all mind themselves back there.
Exactly.
The problem is one time we redeemed points and it just made sense because of just the small jump. But we've actually been able to do that a few times where the kids flew with us. And now it's to the point where we about to board a plane. One of the kids goes, "Daddy, are we flying first class?" And it's like, no, don't ask that question. We do not want to get into that routine.
I know one thing that Lydia has brought up, and maybe this is less of a financial obstacle than it is just a season of life thing, but she really wants to go to Cape Town, South Africa, and spend some time there. And
we will go with you.
You'll go with me?
Yeah, that's like near top of our list right now. Actually,
Right, you just invited yourself. Can I invite myself too? Lydia is not going to have fun. It's going to be an EFM trip. We're going to hijack.
Okay, just hijacked our dreams, and you're coming with me.
Sorry.
It'll be a coincidence. Oh my gosh, Michael and Lydia, you guys are here too? How did this happen?
Same week? What? That's the thing. The more that I hang out with you guys, it's like, we could do that next year. We don't have to wait for some kind of crazy permission. I mean, we're set up to do that whenever we can fit it in and whenever we want to endure the long flight with our little crazies that we have here in the house.
We just crash each other's vacations.
Barcelona is awesome.
But you are not going anywhere in the world without us. And I think a point to be sure we emphasize on this, because I know anytime we start talking about cool cars or trips and travel and all, that there are surely some of our listeners who feel like, oh man, I can't relate to the guys when they start talking that, because I'm on a McDonald's budget and they're talking about Chris's Steakhouse or something, The reality is that this mindset that we're talking around with regard to money, and understanding that God as a loving father delights in blessing his children, in showering us in goodness. And we oftentimes, I think, truncate his ability to do that, because in our own mindsets, like we talked about in the last episode, we just are like, no, I'm not sure that's really okay. I feel guilty about that, or it's not a good use of the money, or whatever. We have a poverty mindset around it. We as dads in our own human families share that same daddy heart that our Heavenly Father has. We want to bless our families, and sometimes the reality is we don't have the resources. God owns the cattle on 1,000 hills, right? Okay, he can do whatever he wants, whenever he wants, as long as we don't, refuse to receive the gift. But in our human lives now, we don't always have all the resources, and we shouldn't just rack up debt because, I'm wanting to bless my family. We should be responsible. We should look at what our reality is, discuss it with our wives. But I think one of the things we're continually circling back to in this episode is the central importance that we believe entrepreneurism holds for us as fathers, as husbands, in giving us the ability to at least say, I've dreamt of this. I'd really like to do it. I think that could be possible. My wife would love it. How could I do that? I'm not God. Oh, but I'm an entrepreneur. And that means that I can think of a creative way to make more money to make that thing become a reality, whether it's, a month-long trip like we took to Europe, or some of the other crazy, wonderful things we've done. The E in entrepreneurial family man, right? The E part of our EFM is a central piece. It's not an afterthought. It's not like, you could do this either way. No, you got to have the portability, flexibility, and financial ability to make these things happen, to be an entrepreneurial family man.
Yes, I love what you just kind of all said there, because it really centers into what's possible and how can I make this happen. Our point here was talking about and discussing this idea of money with our wives, and now that this is action as an entrepreneur is going to mean, okay, how do I link our current reality with that dream, with that fun idea or adventure that we have out there? We serve a creator who put creativity in us, who put ability in us. So how can we then create and make that whole thing able to happen?
I specifically remember a moment about 8 years ago where I was with Michael's older brother, Thomas, and he had picked me up from the middle school where I was teaching at, and we were driving to one of these Man Alive events, and we were talking about all these adventures that we had dreamt up for our family. We were both employees at the time. We were sitting there. He picked me up from his job as an engineer. He's since quit his career to go and help his wife. They have this amazing online business. This is embarrassing. I hope I don't embarrass Thomas too much. We were complaining and grumbling about how these guys, John Eldridge and his friends, had some kind of privilege where they drove around in helicopters and took their families mountain climbing and did all this other stuff. And we were saying, maybe our version of that is going to be eating hot dogs at a campsite. And I remember we looked at each other, oh my gosh, we have to shake off that thinking and move out of that. I think something spiritually happened. McCluskey, when you were saying, there's a lot of people listening and there's like this big gap between where we are and they are, I think that something happens when you plant those seeds in your heart and you actually say, not only could this happen, and you could actually see the thing happening in your mind's eye. Thomas and Shauna just did this amazing event last week that Michael went to, and it all birthed from exactly this conversation that we're talking about. I don't know, Michael, if you could wrap that up or say something.
Oh my gosh. The interesting part of that is there were 4 people in that group that caught that vision and said to themselves, wait, why couldn't we do that? And all 4 of them are now entrepreneurs. At the time when we were talking about it, we had JOBs, every single one of us. Even my father, who was had a career in education, retired and is now an entrepreneur doing consulting. It's pretty powerful when you connect on a thought like that and share it and envision it. Man, doesn't feel like it happens overnight, because it doesn't, but it is worth talking about your dreams with your wife. What do you truly want? What would make you come alive? What are you writing off too early and just glazing past because it's too big of a dream or it's too out there. I'll talk about that stuff. It may happen.
I love that there are 4 of you that were in jobs and now you're all entrepreneurs because you were in that discussion together, dreaming, planning, and then, like this point, acting. You had actions about these dreams and money, and you were doing things to get to that point. This is all part of it. And whether you're listening as an entrepreneur, maybe you're in a career, but you've got to scratch that entrepreneurial itch. Like wherever you are, wherever you find yourself on that spectrum, that conversation with your wife and planning and dreaming together is going to put you on some kind of trajectory about this topic where you say, boy, we have some dreams, and how do we get there? How do we explore this together and make this thing happen together? It's about we, it's about our, it's about together. It can happen.
Thank you for listening to the Entrepreneurial Family Man Podcast. Visit efmlife.com to connect with us and others like you who are pursuing success in enterprise, family, and marriage.